Thank you for hosting us for this Humanities in Session. Thank you for the welcome to our distinguished visitor from the University of Joseph Kizerbo in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Cyrille Koné, born 1965 in Ouagadougou in the waterfall region of Burkina Faso, where he went to school, primary, secondary school, and then began his doctoral studies at the University of Strasbourg in France in philosophy. And that was in 1985. And he devoted his doctoral research to Parmenides, especially metaphors in Parmenides, which I think we will touch on a little bit in our discussion today. Cyrille then went to the University of Ouagadougou and began to teach philosophy. The university was later renamed Joseph Kizerbo. And as he says here in his bio, he likes to observe the world from Burkina Faso. But Cyrille travels extensively, has been part of numerous research groups, initiatives, mainly in France and Germany, as I realize, but has been very keen to connect with us here in South Africa. Numerous visiting professorships, in fact, too many to name. Cyrille has authored about 60 journal articles, 20 book chapters, and several recent books, which I just want to read some of the titles. We have Africa in the World, which we hope to touch on today, Sous la maîtrise de la violence from 2017 on the mastery of violence. Réconciliation et reconnaissance, essai sur la dynamique d'un temps durable. Médiation et gestion des conflits, mediation and conflict management, essays on the ends and means, the Pacific ends and means of leaving crisis. Sorry, my translations are very crude. So there's numerous titles. You can see that there are overlaps between philosophical thinking and issues of violence, conflict resolution, and recognition. Okay, and there's also a forthcoming book called L'éducation humaine, Jeu et quête des sens, selon Jean-Pierre Guinganet. So human education. So there's a very wide range of questions that interest Cyrille. And we were introduced to each other by email by a wonderful colleague who was previously director of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Nantes, Luis Moraes Rodriguez, who's a Costa Rican colleague, and who noticed that here's the philosopher in West Africa who's also thinking about the image. And I encountered Luis last year when I was a fellow in Nantes, and he very kindly put us in touch with each other. And it's a very welcome opportunity to overcome the problem that we've inherited of Anglophone, what can I say, an Anglophone echo chamber. We don't often get the opportunity to engage with our Francophone colleagues, and many of our Francophone colleagues in Africa have broached questions that are really very important to many of us that we are trying to tackle here. So, so that is my little introduction to Cyrille today. who, as you've just learned, is also a great appreciator of jazz. Part of this conversation also, and representing perhaps something of a Lusophone influence in the mix, is Rui Asabuji, who is a research associate here. We all know Rui, I hope. Rui completed his PhD on a visual struggle for Mozambique a few years ago, which is about revisiting narratives and interpreting photographs between 1850 and 1930. So this, some may say, unusual engagement of somebody who was immersed in television and filmmaking in Mozambique as a cameraman, who later took up photography, in fact invited by the famous Ricardo Rangel to join the school, and who has used photography, as he would like to talk about today, as a means of personal meditation of very difficult issues. So this is also an opportunity for us to have an encounter with work that was really not meant to be exhibited or shared in public, but that comes from a very difficult period in Mozambican history, often referred to as the years of lead because they were so heavy and almost impossible. So Rui is part of this conversation as well. Now, what we are trying to do is we've set up a few framework questions, and we will see how it goes, and then we will open up to the audience. But I think if there's at any point where you would like to pause and ask something in the flow, that's perfectly fine with us as well, but we will try to generate a fuller discussion towards the end. And right. So to get to our first framing question, in the abstract that we shared, trying to give a sense of the contours this conversation might take, there are really two big issues that are touched upon, and we start actually with the image, and then towards the end of the abstract, we move to more general philosophical ideas that Cyrille and others have worked with. So we thought that we would start with the second, more general, as a framing discussion. And so it's the part of the abstract where Cyrille, in our initial discussion about this conversation, was talking to us about, and it's a French translation of a Greek term, in French, tylogie. There's no translation in English, actually. The science of talking and learning being, where coming from a position where all things are equal and where humans, animals, and plants are modes of being. It's an egalitarian perspective. There's no kind of hierarchy, no difference of nature between beings, only different degrees of understanding. And from this understanding comes a sense that we have to respect all. And this goes to the heart of much African philosophy. And Cyrille will talk to us a little bit about how he draws on what he calls African traditional religions, where the main principle of cosmology is teaching us to live in harmony with nature and with our environment. And we will probably curve back to this at the end of our discussion, but this is where Cyrille and some of the philosophers and scholars who have also inspired him, I think, including Joseph Kizerbo, regard this as a way of an African assistance to the rest of the world. Now, in reading some of Cyrille's multifarious articles on some of these questions, I just want to pick up with a few quotations. And one of them is about meaningful life, where Cyrille talks about Muse people in West Africa who believe that the condition of being human in itself confers dignity on every human being. That there's a respectability that depends on the individual's capacity to live in line with the recommendations of virtue, and that there is a desire for good that deserves to last forever. It's not something short-term or instrumental. It's something that's durable and an essential constituent of humanity. So I just want to put that there for us. And secondly, in an article about the thought among the Muaga people, who are a very large language group in Burkina Faso, that in a world that's moving towards increasing uniformization, integration of means and values on the political, moral, and cultural level, globalization, if you like, that's the study of African peoples is very permanent, and that others should be able to take stock of the means and values used by African peoples, the paths that they have been clearing to be, in order to be at the rendezvous of history. And I really like this idea of a rendezvous of history, and I think that this conversation, in a way, is a rendezvous of history. Cyrille, I would like to hand over to you to take up some of these points and expand on them, and we can nudge you, we can ask you questions here between myself and Rui.
I think that ancient philosophers are right to think of philosophy as a lifestyle, a way of being, a way of saying things. This means in Africa, philosophers can develop what I said, a thought that challenges colonial order to achieve authentic democracy. What I call colonial order. It's the unique way to think and the conception of dominant people. This is not the unique way. We think by our conception of philosophy as lifestyle, we have opportunity to present our own thoughts, our own conception about things, about nature, about the relationship between us and other beings. This means plants, animal, because in the traditional in African traditional religion, we know this excludes Judaism, this excludes Islam. Some Africans think that Islam is African. Islam is not African. Islam is out of Africa. They think so because Islam is arrived in Africa since a long time, and we finish by appropriate Islam. But Islam is not, in fact, proper of Africa. What is proper of Africa is traditional religion. And this excludes too Christian. And for this, we can understand the nature, their principle, their main principle. These principles are founded about more or less 3 points. The equality, according to the African traditional conception, religion, there is an intrinsic equality between things. It means man, animal, plant. There is no kind of hierarchy. And the nature is an organism, a living organism. Second principle. And the other principle is the main place of intelligence in the nature. This means to have time to see things and learn through animal, through plants, etc. It's why when I propose in my in a text to deal about Maya, or what you call it here Ubuntu, I said this is an African assistance to the world. Maya. What is Maya, or what is Ubuntu? It is the comeback in my mother tongue. It's the comeback to humanity. Maya in Bambana, my motherland. Come back to humanity. How to come back to the humanity? This is to 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 put away the conception of civilization. What are the conception of civilization? It's the sense of mercantilism, the mercantile way of life. And it is connected with domination. And this is an ancient conception in Aristotle's philosophy, who said there are people which have right to govern, and there are people too who cannot govern, are slave by nature. He founded the domination. His philosophy founded the domination. And after this, in a Renaissance period, we met René Descartes and his conception about nature. Man is a master and a possessor of nature. This means men have to dominate animal, to dominate plants, to abuse, to exploit plant, and this founded to our contemporary conception of capitalism. And it's why to build a new democracy founded about solidarity, this means to return to Maya. Because there is no democracy through domination. There is no democracy through representative. The representative democracy is a pseudo democracy because of many contradictions. We are thinking of a coherence between virtue of society and virtue of nature. If we disrupt, there is problem, and we lost the sense of good, common good, which I call it meaningful life. I stop here and
Thank you. Something else I was reading in your texts was an interesting idea that in with that within those ideas and that philosophy, that approach to meaningful life, I think you say that Africans are built for alterity, for being able to relate to the other, which I found very, very compelling. Perhaps you want to speak to that a little bit, Cyrille.
yes, it is about the art of living together. I think this art of living together is connected with the conception of being we had to seek for harmony between we men and animal, and take care for plant and take care for animal, because it depend of our own life. And this means there is a particular status for all things, sacred status. Living is sacred, must be respected. All living, there is no difference between being, except the degree of understanding. No difference of nature. This means to live as an art together. And This excluded domination. You see, their interaction between generation, interaction between things, and their interaction between non-living thing, ancestor, and man. You see, all these contribute to what I call it meaningful life. The life seeking for virtues. This doesn't mean to be virtuous one time or two times, but this means to, to have this inclination to be good often and always. It's an effort to do.
Thank you. I we conversed briefly about this earlier, Cyrille, and perhaps it would be helpful for everyone here because I questioned you about your use of the term um, African traditional religion and the term religion, which to my mind has sort of connotations of organized religion and rules, procedures, hierarchies. And I think it would be helpful for everybody here to understand that you have a much more expansive idea when when you're deploying this particular term. If I could ask you to explain a little bit more what you mean by that.
Yes, you are right. Religion, for me, it's a word to express that there is something above us, something transcend us. What is it? Nobody can say truly what is it, but we believe that there is something above us, and this thing pushes us to be better. This thing pushes us to think about good, good life or virtues. And it's not an organization in order to classify, to put hierarchy between men and things. Religions, for me, is this, a word expressing something as this. There is above me, there is something which that transcend me. And this allowed me to be better, to, to do effort to get better condition, to take care for myself, to take care for other. And this introduced the question of dignity, the care of body. This is the meaning for me, for dignity. It's the care of body, respect of body. It is not true to think that a man is divided between soul and body. And we know Descartes preferred the spirit more than body. Body is source of error. I was very disappointed and there is in my young period as a student in Strasbourg, I was very. It was a trouble for me to learn that there is two parts without connection, the body and the soul. And we know that this is not uh, the unique conception. And this conception is problematic because things are not white or black, things are not big and little. The reality is more complex. Human reality is complex. And Edgar Morin are right by talking about this question of complexity. Yes, things are not simple. And I think this question of dignity require to take care for the problem of body. This means accommodation, the problem of education, health problem. There are material problem that all society have to solve for a human being. Without this, human being is nonsense. It's this put us under human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyrille. Uh, yes, I picture you very troubled by this Cartesian split between mind and body, and and I enjoyed the other day when we were chatting, and you told us that Immanuel Kant was crazy. Uh, so, but thank you for bringing in the question of dignity, which you've argued inheres in this notion of human being. And Cyrille drew our attention to the work done by Burkinabe photographer Leon Nyaba Wedraogo, who we followed up and have drawn this particular diptych by him from an article online by Duck Art, where and this is something that Cyrille spoke very passionately about, that there's it's fairly common with the death of a person that there is blame attributed, the vast majority of cases, to women who can be accused of witchcraft and can be punished in a variety of ways, including exile for many of them, having to run away and seek refuge elsewhere. And Cyrille, you spoke very movingly about the way work by artists like this is towards the aim of restoring dignity to these exiled women. And very interesting if you read the article from Dakar of the way the artist here tries to promote a different image of the women in the second, and the sort of in a way a sort of earlier and later manifestation where he, as he puts it, he glamorizes them, so he casts them in a completely other light. And it's this question of dignity and the work that one can do with images that brings us now, I think, to our second framing question. But perhaps you might want to talk to this set of photographs before we go to the next section, or shall I move on to the framing question?
Leon Ouedraogo is a photographer, Burkinabe photographer. He did a good work for me. It is a work. His work is about emancipation, and it's a true problem here in Africa. This question of emancipation. This means women emancipation. Joseph Kizerbo said it's the main question to solve. And this question allowed development. This question allowed democracy, authentic democracy. Yes, because we know in Burkina Faso or somewhere in Africa, when women become old, patriarchal mentality with in patriarchal context, they incline to take a young woman, a young girl, and reject the old women. And to legitimize this, they accuse old women of witchcraft and put and throw these women out of the village. Nobody can help these women. They have no contact with their own family. It's dramatic. It's dramatic, but it's due to patriarchal mentality. There is the main problem here is the problem of domination, the problem of men. This means male pleasure without any care for other pleasure, only men pleasure. And this have terrible consequences to destroy life, to destroy all women life. You know? And Leon Ouedraogo try to restore all women dignity through photography. You know, there are two different worlds here. Two different worlds. This one look unhappy with problem, mental problem, psychological problem, material problem. and she is anxious. You see? Here, it's the same person, but in different way. She looks more happy, free. She is free. Even she smoke. It's her own problem. She choose to smoke. Why not? And we can say here, she would like, she choose her life. This is here. She choose their life. As everybody, women can choose her own life, as men choose his life. She smoke. Comment tu vas dire? Elle s'est maquillée.
She wears makeup.
She?
She wears makeup.
Yes. This is true. His own desire. And this is for me important because of this idea of equality. This idea of equality between me and you, between me and other being. This is the condition of peace, of social peace. Yes, it is the condition of authentic democracy too. Without this, there is no democracy. It's why the representative model is declining today in Africa and out of Africa. In West Africa, we have many coups d'etat. You know, it's they stop the, no, they stop the democracy has mystification. Yes, it was a mystification in Burkina Faso. We have one day to choose deputies, to choose president, and after this, nobody can choose anything. You wait 5 years after, you have 5 or 3 minutes to do your choice, and after this, no opposition, no right, no freedom. This is not democracy. You see, it's why the representative model, I think, is declining today. This old idea of democracy, the authentic democracy, is possible, but not with our conception of mercantilism, our conception of domination and exploitation between men, the exploitation of man by man. It's not a good conception that allowed democracy, that can help us to build democracy. Democracy is, for me, founded about a main conception of solidarity. Solidarity between men, solidarity between gender, solidarity between ancestor and living things, between man and animal, man and plants. Because of what we are thinking meaningful life. And for me, what Leon Ouedraogo did is very important. There is another man, another colleague, uh, Diallo Idrissa.
Mhm.
He tried to help young children in the street because uh, in Burkina Faso, Islamic people are more or less 55%. And this Islamic education required to young children mendicity. They go in the street, yes, and ask for it, ask for money, etc. And his job, his project is to do photo, to follow young men in this peripecy, to have many photo and show and organize an exhibition or a film, why not? And show how it is not an education to, 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 to condemn young men, young children to mendicity. What he would like to do is here to preserve human dignity, because mendicity destroy all kind of dignity. There is no respect in mendicity. And I think has Léon Ouedraogo, Idrissa Diallo, he is Islamic. He believes in Islam, but he thinks that this is not good. It's not a good education to give to young children, mendicity. He has Léon Ouedraogo to restore dignity. It's rehabilitation. And this question is important. This question is connected with the question of emancipation. This question is important in Africa uh, to, to change the old order. I would like to say the patriarchal order. If we push to emancipation, children emancipation, women emancipation, we will succeed to change the situation. Yes.
Thank you, Cyrille. I think that brings us, in a way, very powerfully into our second framing question, which is about, well, thinking with the image. And I, so many of you know the work we do with visual history and theory, and we are associated with photography mainly. And so it's a really wonderful challenge for me, for us, to be in conversation with Cyrille, who has a different conception of the image as something that is not necessarily an external mediated image, but within philosophy is sometimes referred to as an internal image, a mental image, you refer to metaphor in Parmenides as image. And so we have a much broader expanse of how to think about image, which is very dynamic. And I was just reminded of Hans Belting, the German media theorist who's written hugely on image, that he tries to break down this dichotomy between internal and external image as something that is unproductive because they are constantly influencing each other, as it were. And I think that's a useful place for us to start to bring Rui Asabuji into the conversation here. And Rui would like to share with us works from a personal project that he was doing in Mozambique before we drew him into and condemned him to his South African exile, as it were. So you've said in a way, Rui, that you see this project that well, maybe project is too coherent a word, a series of photographic or meditations with your camera about the world that was in front of you during the years of lead, and that you see in a way as a provocation within this conversation. So let's hand over to you and hear from you and engage with your images. Thank you.
Yes. So this idea of bringing these images came from steam from out of the conversation we we were having with Cyrille, and some of his shared thoughts about, because he started and he is invited by Patricia exactly because in his stance he says that the image have a pedagogical potential, and and besides this pedagogical potential, there are other potentialities of the image, like political, historical, and the means for restoring dignity. Then came up, and all other points that he was putting forward when we were conversing, or like the mind and the reason, this Cartesian split between mind and body, the political concerns of equality and justice, the question of vision and representation, idealism, uh, the meaning of the objects. Uh, so it did remind me very strongly about uh, times in which I was start dealing with the image. You know, I was 80s, middle 80s. I was working at the television, and I was being trained to be a cameraman. But we working at the television at the time, the post independence, we were instruments of the party, and we were all engaged in one mission, which was to build a new nation, uh, a new country, independent country, popular. And so even though the concept of freedom there is also a little bit tricky, because in one sense we are free, but we were not really free. We were in a mission, we are given a mission, and we have to stick on those parameters and on that narrative, actually. Okay, creativity have a space there, but under certain measures, let's put it like that. So um, and then working as a cameraman, there was Ricardo Rangel it was the early days of television in Mozambique, and it was actually called experimental television. And Ricardo Rangel, an old photographer, it's the father of Mozambican photographer, as is considered, insisted that we should have a basic education of the image of the photography. Photography is the basic of cinematic language and television, so we should be educated. Uh, and and then I went to the the Center for Photography that he created and start my training as a photographer. And um, and then I felt this passion for photography, and then I was thinking, okay, that would be eventually a space for me to try and as a way of an exercising this ability of producing images. You know, like what do I do? What do I do with the image? How can I bring out my own ideas or my own understandings of the situation, which is out of the discourse? And so photography became for me a space of experimenting, of exercising, of expressing myself. And this is what I was doing with photography, without any pretension of uh, putting the exhibition or develop a series or any conscious about that. It was just responding my own emotions in face of the situations and what I was living. And and so there was a series of photographs. Many of them were never used, like publicly. Some have been in an exhibition here and there, forced eventually. But um, and there is the series that I have, and that I call the color of my eyes. And the color of my eyes is exactly its initial provocation, because this is about black and white photographs. So where is the color in black and white? And the colors are there in the different gradations of the gray, from black to white or vice versa. We find the colors, but and we just recognize the colors, or we just understand the colors, or we just see the colors if we are equipped for it, you know. And then it brings these ideas of visibility, invisibility, the mental, the memory. What does this knowing imply on reading an image and understanding the situation or not? And so I'm presenting to you. I'm presenting myself in front of you today as Mozambican. We chose photography as a ways of uh, communication, but then I image as a ways of communication, and then exercise on photography for a self-expression. Uh, so, and what I'm showing to you is some photographs taken between 87 to uh, 2004. So 87 is when I start my training as a photographer, or on photography, to be more precise. And 2004 is when the first national elections in a new democratic dispensation happened in Mozambique. Um, and then I say that is from that period and beyond, because the images are not conscribed to the date, to that period. They out of the frame, out of that was visible but can be understood. They expand back and forwards in time, and go much further than what we uh, eventually will try to limit. There is no strong limitation for that. Um, so, and this is a little bit a narration of a historical period through my eyes, to the colors of my eyes, in which I question myself and I question the things, and that I try to interpret there from my own, and I'm sharing with you, because this is a conversation in which this is the work of the image that I'm trying to bring into the conversation with the philosophical. And so this is also a kind of my philosophical attitude towards photography. So this photograph is, the idea of this photograph is, with the independence, the people came into the city. The people took the city. Before, the city were not for the people, were for the colonizers, were for the privileges. But the independence opened the door for people to come into the city, and that is for me the reason of these photographs. When I took these photographs at the time, that was the main intention, the discourse of the photograph, and also the gesture, the eventually the father that holds the hand of the kid and walks, and all that is all an ambience of the promise of the freedom, the promise of independence. And it is actually nebulous. It is a kind of a flare on that, which is a warning, which is, like that tan 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 or ta da da film, like it alerts you for something that is not quite. And this is an image actually has nothing to do with what I wanted this image to talk about. This It was taken during a service that I was doing with. It was a ship that transported crude oil and was kind of abandoned in Mozambican waters and was drifting there and was spilling crude oil in the ocean, and this crude oil came onto this bay, and this is Maputo city. So it was like getting polluted by this ship, Katinape. And so I was doing work on that, cover that event, and then I saw this image. And this image for me is this idea of so close and so far at the same time, because on the other side of the bay there's people, and then there in front is a city, and people out of the city dreaming to come to the city. The city is the El Dorado, is the good life, is where the development is where you find your ways of empower your life and be better. But besides that, it's not possible. You can't cross the ocean. So this idea of the dream, and I call this a mirage. It's, like you walk on a desert and you thirsty, and then you see the palm tree and the fountain, but it's not there. It's something that comes, and so this is the idea of this image, and this crude, that contrasty black and white also brings a little bit of the heaviness of the situation. This photograph is also one of those things. Um, I guess it's evident. It's this discussion about the equality. One of the preaching, the things of the independence was equality, human emancipation, and but in reality, what we see is this division, is this unbalancing. The man is traveling and is carrying his little thing, and the woman is also traveling. He has this 25 liter on top of her head is water. They have to walk distances to get water, and that water is to at least last 1 or 2 days in their homestead. So, and then they stopped and talk, and eventually the man was talking to the woman, and the woman is just standing with that heavy stuff on her head, and it felt like for them it is normal, but it's actually is not. Like I was trying to bring here this discussion, plus the fact that this place, it was in Niassa province, Niassa province is a very traumatic place in the history of Mozambique, because it was a place where terrible re-education camps were installed. There was actually, it was in one of those camps close by this place where the oppositors of the regime, not oppositors, they were oppositors in the sense that they were also struggle. They create parties against the colonial regime, but they were not accepted in the new nomenclature. So they were arrested and they were put in these camps, and they were summarily killed. Like it's one of those cases that it's still there, pending, and they were considered traitors. They were considered allies to the colonial regime, but they were also fighting for their rights and independence, and they had parties. So they were silenced, and they tried to erase them from history, classifying them with something that actually the new story is, and building these things up and making questions and creating questions, and there is no answers, straightforward answers. This is a photograph of, this is thinking about tradition, because tradition, in a way, then in the discourse, was something not quite right, because we wanted to, the new dispensation wanted to have a free society, and a free society looking for fighting against costumes that were in tradition, like a man that marries so many women, and other things like that. Although there is a reason why in rural areas, in the culture, a man married few women, because women have to work. They work in the fields. They have to get wood. They have to go and get water, and it becomes heavy. So the women themselves, they ask a man to marry other women so that they can help. They can have help in the homestead. So this is almost like if the tradition is entrapped in a structure that is an older structure, because it's foreign structure, it's colonial, and it's like 500 years of history of domination. This two photographs putting side and side. This is in the left side is in the city. So for me, this is also about not only to destroying the old dispensation, the colonial is falling apart. It's the ruins of colonial structure, but it is also a presence of the new reality. The new reality was this poverty. Mozambique was under this years of civil war. We were islands, cities, urban centers were almost islands. We couldn't move away, because moving away is to face the war, is to face it's a matter of life and death. If you fall in one ambush, you can lose your life, or you can get kidnapped, you can, disappear. And but besides, and that war created one phenomenon, which was the street kids. So I was doing work on the street kids in the city when I took this photograph, and the street kids were not just orphans; they were also kids that the fathers went to work in the mines in South Africa. Uh, the the mother and the uncle, in this poverty, couldn't really manage them or take care of them, and then they would prefer to go to the streets instead of staying in the house. So it was a huge thing. Those times, the odds of street children on the streets, and even living in this ruin, you don't see a shame. You don't see there is some kind of dignity in this posture, defiance. You know, like we survive, we're still alive, and we are doing alive. And yes, it's a very meaningful photograph for me. And I was trying to bring these things out when I do the image. Not to say that there are street kids and then they live where they live, but they are kids and they have strength, they have dignity, and they are not ashamed of. And on the side is also another image, and here I take this as, I call it a young mother. It's a very common in Mozambique that you find the kids taking care of other kids because the parents have to go, the mother have to go and work in the field, have to go and get water, I don't know, kilometers far. So the kids take care of the kids. It's a very normal thing. But it doesn't mean that he is not without problems. You know, kids are kids. But they, since early age, they start developing this sense of care and the care for the other. And but here I see my interpretation is a little bit the idea of a nation as young, because Mozambique was this young nation to coming, and it was taken care by youngsters because these people, the ones that took the country, were young men, you know, 20s, 30s. The president, I think, was 34. The minister, or one minister, was 26 years old, you know, and then they had to take the country because the Portuguese, they just left or were in this process of leaving and make a transition, and so we had to assume that. So there is this issue about careness and taking care, assuming a responsibility in a so early age, but with this idea of care in in the image. And this is also during this period of anos de chumbo, in which, because of the war, all the infrastructures producing factories, etc., bridges and stuff were destroyed, and Mozambique lived, um, survive with aid, international aid. And this photograph was taken in a harbor. We were receiving rice from USAID. And there is this, I like because of the gesture, this gesture of, in Portuguese is a mão estendida. A mão estendida is the gesture of the mendicity, is a gesture of, you know, like begging for something. And it was a kind of characteristic that somehow assumed the country, the appeal to the international aid. And we lived on that idea that international aid or had the responsibility to keep us going. Even a president say, "Oh no!" In one addressing people in one of these rallies, he said, "No." Shisano said that now we are going to ask international community to help us with this project, with that project. Like it became a kind of institutionalized attitude that create other problems. And on the side, so it's again about this gesture. This photograph was taken in one of the refugee camps, and the refugee camps where the people were conscripted because they couldn't stay in their own villages because of the insecurity, because of the war. So they lived in these camps waiting for international aid in order to survive. So there is this gesture on the back, like almost a protective gesture, but that is not enough. It was never enough. The aid were never enough, and much of that aid never really reached the ones that really wanted. So there is now other sort of things that one can get out of this analyzing and discussing this image. And this is a photograph on the left. was the first national democratic elections when the peace agreement was reached in 2004. Then was the election, was the first election, and this idea of the woman have a voice, and then this children that is so that is not yet a democracy. Democracy will come with the one that from early age start learning the process and what it is. You know, that's kind of growing up in in a new way of in a new dispensation. Let's put it like that. So democracy wasn't reached there yet, but there were this hope of a future. There were all of these indications that the future will come, that eventually, finally, we were gonna get somewhere positive. And this is what the image on the right, for me, brings out. This idea of people that suffered so much for 400 years of enslavement and exploring colonialism, 10 years of war for independence, plus 16 years of civil war. And yet the people are there. There is this warmth. There is this tired but yet sweet, and the wish to uh, keep going, and solidarity and understanding. But this man was former miner. He works in a mine in South Africa, and then we went back to Mozambique, sick, and never could go back to the mines again. When I met him, he was working for the municipality, cutting grass in one of the squares in the. And this image for me is exactly what the peace agreement brought to Mozambique, because then it was the country opened itself to the market, international market, and was under guidance of FMI and World Bank. So this things of mercantilism, everything become commodified, and it was the image was taken in one of the exits of town. So people are now traveling to their villages and places of origins, and there is a battle. Now is a different war. Now is a war of surviving, because people on the streets are desperately trying to fighting each other to get and sell their own things, and so everything is on sale. Nothing is producing in the country, you know, like Castle, the G's, and everything is from somewhere, but is on sale. And thereby on the right stream right inside is for me the core of my message, is that, you know, like everything is commodified, even people. So it is this face that is embottled, is someone that is embottled, is in a plastic bottle, so is also a product, is a commodified, is this kind of modernity that is uh, a joke. And so it creates so much of a problems that this image, it is harsh. It's difficult to see, but if you look at that there, you will see the fetus. Well, it's, yeah, it was thrown away. That was one of the phenomena that happened quite intense in Mozambique, because it's all of this desperation. The women, the girls, they couldn't take it. They would throw away the babies away at their innocence. So it brings all these issues of the society that is in despair. So I'm not gonna like talk about each of that, but if one looks at it, anyone can take his own ideas and uh, understandings about what is at stake here. And I would like to end up with this. This is a photograph. Is about I took it in a small city in Yamban, where there was this center for orthopedic center, the problem of minds, you know, and and well, in poverty, you can't choose what to do or what you have to be creative and build your own ways to sort out the problems. And so this man was learning to walk after having lost his leg. It was taken then, but the situation still remain nowadays. There is like a few months ago, it was a scandal in one of the biggest hospitals in the country that a broken arm or broken leg, broken bone had to be fixed with newspapers, wrapping newspapers, and this is now. So it's still very present, even though and then it brings all sorts of discussions because that promise of democracy, it never happened. These last elections were in 2000, October 2004 was the worst of all of them, because then there was no intention of disguise or intention of pretending that this is a pure election. Like the fraud was just open. It is completely arrogance. The one that was elected actually was a representative of Frelimo that is in power in 15 years. And in 15 years, the country became even more poor than then. And no one really, or many, don't really want that. So they lost, and they are proved. It's proved. It's thousands of documents submitted to the tribunal discussing the results of the elections, but the tribunal gave the victory to the ones that are in ruling. And it creates a series of protests all over the country. And these protests were met with gas, bullets, uh, uh, voices from the opposition that have been killed, journalists, disappeared activists. Still today, they go into house, paramilitaries. They call it, there is one particular that we call Esquadrões da Morte. Death squads are operating big time. So, well, yeah, but yet looking at the photograph, Mozambique is standing, crippled. And the thing that there is a bare feet for us, particularly in more urban areas, means poverty. Here is normal, it's kind of cultural that the people go around without food. It was, for me, when I came, was a kind of a surprise. Che, mulungu, nem sem sapato. Oh! But it's kind. But in my country, someone walking in the streets, particularly in towns, without shoes is poverty. So the country is poverty, is crippled. Sovereignty, there is no sovereignty there, and still we standing. And eventually, one day, perhaps with a coup d'état, we're gonna distribution. But those are the thoughts that came to me to engage with Cyrile's propositions. Uh,
Thank you very much, Rui. I'm very aware that we need to also give time for general discussion. So what I'd like to do now, if I may, I'm going to open the conversation to everybody. If you have questions, comments, points of clarification, and of course, Cyrille is welcome to ask questions of Rui and vice versa, and to each other. And let us continue this what did you call it? The philosophy of the night. After some of these really images that make me think of a nightmare, but which was there and continues. So thank you very much, Rui. Please, I'd like to open to any questions or comments, and I see Pramesh has his hand up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought both of those presentations were really provocative and important in all sorts of ways. Cyrille, your presentation reminded me of this film Yaba. Idrissa Odegawa, I think is yeah, um, which came out, I think, many years ago. In fact, when it was first shown here, the cinema in Johannesburg was bombed after the showing of that film. It was the height of the kind of transition period when that film. And I know Gibraltar Mambeti made a documentary film on the making of that film, which I haven't seen, but I'm told is a very important statement about African cinema and the image in African cinema. I wanted to ask about that one. There's a scene in that film, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's about an elderly woman who's thrown out of the village, and these two young children, Bila and his sister, take care of her. They kind of make sure that she's looked after, and there's a deep sense of what you were giving us in your presentation about a different or more authentic version of the democratic ideal in that exchange. But there's a scene in there with the chicken. The youngsters steal a chicken from the village and they break a moral code about not stealing to make sure that Sanna, the elderly woman, is taken care of. And I was wondering, as you were speaking, about the tension between moral code and emotion, and how one negotiates that within the kind of frameworks that you've given us. Because I do think there's something about the category human that we deal with in the humanities that hasn't been sufficiently interrogated. I hate that word, but hasn't been elaborated perhaps. That what we tend to do is to think of the human as received wisdom. And yet in Yaba, there's something in that relationship between those young brother and sister and Sanna, the elderly woman, that is deeply evocative about what we might mean about in thinking about the human.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Cyrille and Rui. I was wanting to try and make points of connection between the two, but I won't. I want to follow up on what Premesh has asked, but in a slightly different direction, and to hear you. I mean, Cyrille, clearly there's a need for us to engage with your scholarship. But you seem to have a concept of virtue that underpins that is about a work or a making, the art of living together. That virtue is an effort. It's something that is iterative. That is an effort that is lifelong. So there's something about the labor of virtue that as an active application that seems to almost cross over the moral, the emotional, but also the social and the political. I would like just to ask you to reflect a little more for us how you're thinking about virtue and the work it does, but also the work it requires.
Cyrille, your book Africa in the World, I've yet to read it, but I'm going to do so. But I believe one of the things it speaks about is how contributions from this part of the world, from African continent, are often overlooked and invisibilized due to a kind of assimilation into world heritage, if you like. And I think what both of you gave us today was a really evocative demonstration of how art and photography in particular can help to re-visibilize things. Could you speak, Cyrille, in particular to the issue of repatriation of cultural artifacts to West Africa and your country as well. I think Macron, when he first gave his speech several years ago, he gave it in Burkina Faso, if I'm correct, and then commissioned that report that recommended restitution of cultural artifacts from France and other European countries. What role do you think that that will play in terms of helping to revisibilize things? Thanks.
The tension between code moral and emotion. If I consider life has founded in traditional way, this tension is more or less solved. There is not a tension. In reality, there is no tension because the code, moral code, the education uh, uh, for, uh, for, for moral code require big effort, intellectual effort, but physical effort too, to control himself. Yes, to have control. And this means to be able to have a critical distance with things. Don't follow the sense, don't follow your mind too, but have any time distance with things. This is meaningful life. Meaningful life for me doesn't mean comfortable life. It's different. Comfortable life is founded about what I can, the pleasure I have to get a beautiful house, to get a beautiful car, to get comfortable life. But meaningful life is more than this. This means a life with virtue, life founded about goodness. What is good for me means what can be good for others. There is no contradiction between me and other. No, there is a relationship, a strong connection. And in the text, in the book African in the World, I try to, 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 to show the presence of Africa in the world. Africa is more present than people think. The presence of Africa is in the heart. Senghor are right when he said Africa brings a lot in the heart. The vision of art boosts the production in arts in Western way. And there is a presence of Africa in music, African sunny music through the world, you know. Many rhythm of in the world come from Africa. The sunny music, slave go to America with their background, their culture, and disseminate this in the world. But there is a presence too in science, there is a presence in philosophy. And the main question is the restitution, the question of the restitution of African arts. And I think normally it's not a question for our contemporary society. We live, we believe in equality. We believe that there is no kind of hierarchy between men of arts objects that are in Europe must return to the continent, to the proper, because the artist exist and can protect their own production. They are able to protect this. The argument to say that in Africa there is no clean museum, no means to protect the objects, the patrimony of humanity is not true, because of these objects are produced by artists, and we know the artists. The artists have means to protect, to keep, and take care. And we think that it is possible to organize the protection through each nation, through each state. The question is to accept that the colonial mentality is not good today, is wrong, and to have the humility to be now or to have justice as rule. Yes, democratic. I mean democratic conception of justice. This means equality. This means respect of property. And for this, I saw many states in Europe, as France, taking more time to restitute things, and always they put conditionality. It is not democratic. It is the position of domination. Yes, they still try to maintain this conception of a relation founded about domination. It's a violation of human right to take things for over and to refuse restitution.
The concept of your concept of virtue, Professor Koné. Yes. How is this different from the classical Western philosophical concept of arete or excellence, which I think was taken up by the Catholic Church. And then I have a question or comment for Rui, which on one of the photographs, beautiful pictures, by the way, photographs. Yeah, and this might be more of a comment. I hate to be that person, but the one with the street kids, the child mother, that made me think of my work, my previous work in Zambia, working with children who are also street kids. But there's something about the dignity there that I think we should think about more. And interestingly, yes, that one, those set of photos. Interestingly, the children we worked with in Zambia, they actually did not want to be called street kids, which was very interesting. And I wonder whether you can comment on maybe the crisis of the human rights concept of child rights, right, which has been used. And usually people who use the concept of human rights, international NGOs would show pictures like this and use them to basically as poverty porn. But you switch it on the head and say there's a dignity to these children.
So my question is somewhat half formed, and might be more philosophical. It's a question that's generated from Rui's last image, but also ties into Cyrille's presentation as well. So it's about perspective. So and maybe to come at it from the other side, yeah. So this image, which immediately asks questions of what's not in the frame. It's got authorial intention etched all over it, and the core question that this image raises for me is one of trust, and the community of trust that the exhibition or the photographic is trying to create. It tries to create a sense of an us between the photographer and the viewer, that the perspective that this image is presenting, as you narrated it, Rui, is true, right? And in the age in which we're living in, with AI generated images and all sorts of things, the question is what's not in that image when you see the stump, right? On one level, obviously, there's a missing leg. On another level, there could be a leg that's just not in the frame. And so there's a trust between you and me that's created in reading this image. And it's a production of an us, a pro nobis, right, to go to Martin Luther, and this notion of expanding the us. Who's in the us? Who is in this us of this human rights that's been continuously evoked across both presentations, which working from Luando and my special issue in Africa Focus, the question of what concept of the human is in this human rights becomes really important. So that tied into this question of the image that Cyrille was putting on the table, and which made me think a lot of the work of Henri Bergson, and this notion of the between us that Bergson puts on the table, the image as not an interface, but that which is in common across. Matter is image in a way. In Bergson's philosophy, and so there's an undoing of a separation between you and me. In a way, there's something in common. And yet there's a perspective that comes into that, right, as well, which is when someone asserts an us that excludes someone else, then there's a political dimension, which is what colors a lot of Cyrille's presentation. So I'm just trying to think how perspective connects into that question of the between us of the image on the one side, and then the community of trust and the expanding of the us on the other side.
The difference between virtue and arete for me, according to my conception, for me, virtue is thinking about self-harmony and harmony with nature. This means to have to look for goodness for me, goodness for other. In arete, in the arete, what is required is to be to be good. This means to be reasonable. It's the question of individual. This is different. Each person have to do effort to be reasonable. But I can be reasonable toward myself and dereasonable toward other. In the case of what I call it the quest of virtue, you are always looking for, you are in quest of harmony, self-harmony, self-control, and you are in quest of harmony with nature. It means other man, plant, animal. You know, this is different. My conception of virtue, in my conception, we are connected with things. We are living, we are an element of the nature. In Arete, as Aristotle thinks, man is specific. Among beings, man has a higher status. In my meditation, in my theology, there is no difference of nature between being. There is only there is a degree of understanding, different degree of understanding. It's why things being are equal. And this founded the possibility of authentic democracy. And you are right. In Bergson philosophy too, I saw image has founded on thought, has in Parmenides' work. And this is the problem with Parmenides. Parmenides saw the connection between thought and image. Image are representation. What I think, what I am, he said in his poem, being is the same thing with thinking. The third fragment said, this. And he forgot. I'm wondering why Parmenid refused or forgot that image is the characteristic of man. The image is connected not to thought, but to the life. This is the main difference. If we connect image with life, we will have not only thought image, we will have visual image, we will have sensual image, we will have sound image, we will have two intellectual image. You see, there are multiple image, and this is due to to mankind. Yes, and I think Henri Bergson is I could say it, he closed it to Parmenides, and I try to show other thing, the large conception, the large definition of image, and the large potential of image. Image are not only intellectual, but we have sensual image, we have visual image, we have two intellectual image. This is what I can reply. Okay.
Yes. Well, this question of the image of the children and the human rights, it's very sensitive, but it has been used, and eventually, yes, one needs to be care about how to use it, and there is always, at the first instant, a good intention, but good intentions, of good intentions, the world is full of, and those good intentions are fooling us. So yes, it's not that much of a comment I can say about that. But that question connects with the Maurice comment about the trust. And my intention here is exactly this: sharing this community, the doing of us, and it's only possible because we trust each other. And when I when I bring this to the conversation, I know to who am I talking to and how I bring this in and open it out for the dialogue and for questioning ourselves about all the let's put it, theoretical issues that serve as the base for us to work in the world and to try a contribution. And I don't know what could I say, and I this is exactly my provocation in relation to what we were talking to with Cyrille. What then at the end of it, bottom line is, what is the work that we do? What is the impact of it? What is the result? Because the reality is that is what we see. This crippled poverty, you know, like sovereignty is gone. Mozambique, the public servants in Mozambique are paid by the World Bank. And if the World Bank says we don't pay you, there is no salaries. We never had so many universities in the country, and there is no solution. Actually, the poverty is increasing, and we are less and less producing things. Everything is imported. Everything is commodified. There is nothing that we can see that calls us for a certain kind of positivity. It's a failure. You know, like this series is also thinking about a discussion or seminar that we had years ago, Love and Revolution, and all that impact and then the failure. So it probably is a call for us to really start asking ourselves to be more contundent in what we're doing, and not only just promoting changes, but you know, like making them effective, so that we really start having a different world. Virtue, not virtual.
That's a wonderful ending. I just want to, before thanking everyone, I want to just add to the discussion about what Moritz calls the deliberate framing of the extremities of the body. Because as I understand, when Rui was doing his photography studies, there was a project that you embarked on, and you chose to focus on people's feet. And I think you told me that you drew this from a poetic statement in the writer Miyakoto about the furthest extremity being the most unloved part of the body, and that you wanted to put that in another light, as it were. And there are, in fact, other photographs of feet that are really extraordinary and beautiful, and despite all. So maybe there's a bigger us in all of this. I'd like to say it's not just those who work in the image, etc. It's not separated off. This is a bigger conversation and trust, actually. So thank you very much. And when Moritz was talking about Bergson, I was also reminded of Jean-Luc Nancy's work, The Ground of the Image. I don't know if you know that, but who talks about the making of a photographic image as sharing the unshareable, as a kind of creating a suspended hesitation, that putting the other into a place of suspended hesitation. So it is kind of unstable, impermanent, but that bridge is there. So perhaps there's lots to think with, and I want to thank Cyrille and Rui for your trust in us and sharing your ideas and your works in this really intimate and wonderful way. And thanks to the audience and interlocutors for your questions and responses. Thank you, everybody.